A very warm welcome to all who are joining us today. Thank you very much for taking time out of what I suspect are increasingly busy schedules. You're joining this webinar, and I thought I'd say a little bit about it before we get started. So my name is Linda Amran Cooper, and I'm head of the Centre for Distance Education at the University of London and chair for this afternoon. For over 15 years, the Centre has undertaken applied research evaluation and fostered innovation with distance, online and flexible blended learning. So while the pandemic has had very many real downsides, for the work for the Centre for Distance Education, we have seen a flourishing in our world of distance and online education. Innovation, exploration and a commitment to improvement are themes we have observed. During the summer, Goldsmiths University of London and the University of London in Paris started working with the Centre for Distance Education to explore the way digital and online education is changing really rapidly in 2020. We conceived of this webinar series, Experiences in Digital Learning. The idea with the series of webinars is to hear from stakeholders who are involved in the grand adventure of digital learning in the time of pandemic. Excuse me. Colleagues may be aware of a report that's just launched from JISC, following their recent work, entitled Learning and Teaching Reimagined. I'll pop a link into the chat, but I thought I would share three of their main findings from some key stakeholder groups. Here is what they found. Students prefer blended learning that incorporates extensive online components alongside in-person learning because it's more convenient, saves time, and makes it easier to access course materials. Lecturers see opportunities to improve educational outcomes by adopting a wide range of learning activities, allowing greater flexibility of study times, space for reflection, and a move to different forms of assessment. And leaders in higher education believe blended learning enables anytime, anywhere learning, breaks down geographical barriers to delivery, and extends institutional reach into new markets. As we travel through the rest of this academic year, the Experiences in Digital Learning webinar series will help us to probe these findings, to explore the ways in which we are developing to align with and exceed the expectation of stakeholders in higher education. Turning to today's event, I'm delighted to introduce our expert panel, who will share with you some of their innovations and excellence in relation specifically to synchronous teaching, learning that happens right now with our students while they're in the same time frame, but not necessarily the same geographical space as their teachers. This is an exciting area of rapid and effective development. And so we couldn't resist entitling today's webinar as Adventures in Synchronous Online Teaching. Slides please with the presenters, Andrew, if you can. We have three presentations of 10 minutes each. So first of all, we've got Mark and Matt from Goldsmiths University. And after them, we have Simon from SOAS. And then finally, Thierry from Paris. So it's fantastic to have an international panel here, and I know that we've got an international audience. So 3 presentations, about 10 minutes each, and we should have 10 minutes discussion time between each, and then a bit at the end. And I may invite the panel to comment on each other's input too at the end. In terms of audience interaction, it's a Teams live streamed event, so you're not able to put your camera or your sound on, but you can input questions. And my colleague is just showing you how the questions appear on the screen. So we'll be monitoring the questions, and it's my job to try and make sure that the presenters get the opportunity to address some of the questions. So that's the Q&A tab there. So what I'll do now is hand over to our first speakers, Mark and Matt from Goldsmiths, University of London, to share with us their adventures.
Thank you very much, Linda. Here is the talk that Matthew and I would like about adventures. Okay, right, I'm joking. It's not going to be like that. This is, I think, one of the hardest things to do, to speak to an existing slide and make it curious and fun and creative. So this is exactly what this lecture is about, not what even this lecture is about. So I'm going to explore two things really in the talk before I hand over to Matthew. One is about presence. How do I bring all of myself as a teacher, someone who's been passionate about education for 40 years or more, in order to connect with my students, to get a real sense of us learning together. And so it's about presence, but then about performance. And I'm a musician. I've been an improvised jazz musician for most of my life. And I very much think about it in terms of theatre and performance. And so I want to share those ideas with you. The first thing to say is that I would never talk to students when I want to say, I just talk to them like this. I'd say, for example, being stuck is good. It's only when you are stuck on something that you are using all of your mental faculties in order to try to get to a place where you're unstuck. So, when I'm trying to speak to students, I won't have any text around. Maybe I might have this. I might just put my name to make it really clear that they can address me as Mark or Professor Dinverno, and something about what I care about. I care about Matthew, my colleague, who's the program leader for the BSc in computer science, which now has 3,000 students. I think Matthew will correct me if I'm wrong, asked me last term when I was in lockdown in London to give these online mathematical tutorial support for students all around the world. And I completely relish the opportunity. The first thing I want to say is, what do you need to get presence? And the very first thing that you need is to get good sound. And what I want to show you is, at the moment, I am using the sound on my microphone, and in about 5 seconds, when I find the right link, I'm going to switch between the sound on the laptop that I'm using and the sound on this microphone, which I've got here. So all I need to do is to give you a count. So it's going to go 3, 2, 1, switched to this, and suddenly, so the criticality of sound is often overlooked, and it's really important that you get that. So actually, some of the students have said how important it is that they can hear the nuances when I'm trying to be funny. I try not to be too funny, but curious or engaged or curious about what they're thinking. So that as a musician, I care deeply about sound. So sound is the first thing that you absolutely need to get right. So brilliant. I hope that there was a moment there, and if not, go back and listen on headphones, because it's a big difference using a nice USB microphone. So the second thing I want to talk about is vision. So at the moment, I'm just using the camera in my laptop, but actually I want to be able to cut to another camera. And this idea of sort of cutting between cameras, you've got to get it right, of course. It's kind of like it's a dynamic way which students like. It shows that you're trying to create a story with scenes, a story with sort of an ideas of talking to them in different ways. And I haven't quite got that working just as I would like it to, but that's okay. We're improvising here a little bit, so I'm not unhappy with that. And then the next thing I think about is my physical environment. Well, you'd have noticed that deliberately I've sat by a window. So the very first thing that you need to do is not sit next to windows. I'm going to close this window, and there's a few tricks that I learned about developing my presence. So exit stage left, pursued by a bear. Here is my black backdrop. This is all cheap stuff, you can buy this online, and I can just see there that there's a little bit showing. So it's very, very easy for me to go in, and I can play with that setting and just cut off that corner. So that's one of the things that I do, as I try to create a sense of just me trying to teach. People don't want to see what's in my bedroom where I've done all of my teaching. The next thing I've got is a cheap light. Again, mention the word cheap. I'm going to put that on, and I hope that it comes on. And again, that gives me a sense of presence. Who am I? Who is this person that's trying to really engage, really support the creative processes of students? And I'm giving all my tricks away here, but hey, we're trying to have fun together. The other thing that I've always done, and I did it from the day one, and I don't really know why, but again, I think it's a sense of costumes, dressing up, performance. I put on a black polo neck jumper like this. And again, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get students to really connect with me as a human being, with me as a kind of someone who cares about teaching and mathematics and is prepared to make an effort to really invest in them and invest in this process. I'm using a free software system called OBS, Open Broadcast Software, and another time I could easily make a video about really just the rudiments about how you use that. But that idea of cutting, of using just 2 cameras really makes a difference. So I'm ready now. I've got the digital presence. I've got my scenes set up in OBS. I've got my lights. I've got my costumes. I've got my backcloth. I'm in a black box theatre like the Almeida. Look, see, I've blown it already. I'm not going to go in and adjust that because you get the point. And so now I have a sense of how am I going to communicate? Well, every single story needs, every single theatre piece needs a story. So the kind of key thing that I need to do next is introduce how am I going to tell my drama? Well, I used the whiteboard. I've always taught with the whiteboard. And so I just want to recap what I've talked about my presence, which is about good sound, good vision, and getting my physical environment right so that I can really properly connect with students. And you'll notice that I'm not speaking into the right camera. That is hard, and I haven't quite got the hang of that. But why I like to use this other camera is because I can really try to talk about my creative processes as they're happening. And then it's, of course, it's all the normal stuff about what makes good teaching. And for me, it's genuinely giving a sense of theatre and performance, but improvisation. I think this is key. Of course, I look at the subject material in advance, but I don't think too hard about how I'm going to respond to what the questions are being asked by students. Very similar to this, the students can write their questions, and I will always make an effort, as I'm going to switch to this, I would always make an effort to read the questions and to get their names right and to connect with them and thank them for contributing and to hear what they're going on. But there's something about the moment to moment interaction with this whiteboard. If I'm talking about differentiation and I'm saying, what's happening for me? I'm saying, well, x squared, we know that's a polynomial. And if we differentiate, we know that, I'm not going to give you a maths lesson here. But the fact that I can connect with my creative process, I make lots of mistakes, and they're not deliberate mistakes, I just do. And the students correct, they don't mind me making mistakes because I can have humility that I don't always know how to do it, or I sometimes get the calculations wrong. But the students lean into that. They get a real strong sense of this is unfolding in the moment. It is theatre, and it's theatre that we're all part of and all included in. And so for me, just to recap, that sense of giving yourself a real presence online, but that moment to moment sense of your creative process, just like if I was playing the piano, why do we connect with each other? We connect with each other when we're improvising, when we're seeing the real them, not because I'm reading, hello and welcome to my maths lecture today. So I just wanted to share that. I really love teaching, and I'm going to hand over to the person who asked me to be involved in this, the actual program leader for the BSc. So Matthew, over to you. Cut.
So thanks, Mark.
I have to unshare in Teams. Okay, stop sharing.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much, Mark. And I should just say that the feedback from the students after Mark's sessions was fantastic. Really, there's comments like he was a master at work. We're really privileged to have experienced this, and really, it's not just Mark being brilliant in the first place, but I would say that also it's because of the way Mark works, that when when he was developing this setup, he was prepared to listen to us and to to actually watch himself, and we would watch what was coming through him. He said, oh no, you need to adjust the lighting, or you need this tool or that tool. And I think that's an essential part of it, is to be a reflective practitioner. You meant to, this is a new context for our practice as teachers, and we need to engage with that and to be prepared to do things wrong, to criticize what we're doing and to improve that based on what other people say. So I think that what you see there, often you see Mark doing this fantastic layout, but really, it was an iterative thing, wasn't it, Mark? We went through, we fed back, we listened to each other's comments and figured out what Mark's kind of voice was and where that was, and that's how we got to that. So I know we don't have much time left, so I just wanted to just basically show you this facility that we've been developing over the last year or so, just in time to be locked down, so we can hardly use it, but that's okay, which is our sort of self-filming studio. So the idea is we wanted our people to be able to come in and either do a live or a recorded session where they could do a kind of live edit of what they're doing. So I'm going to jump over to my other input here, and you'll kind of hopefully see a slightly higher end version of me, which is always good, coming through now. And so what we got here, actually what I might do is jump over to here and just show you what the thing looks like. I was going to just show you the kit, because this is where I am. So this is our green screen studio, and so the idea is that on your own you can essentially operate this thing and do your live webinars. So we've done some live stuff in here. We've also done recording in here, and the trick is that we've got a little way of kind of jumping around, doing different camera angles and things like that. So for example, let's see, I'm doing my classic kind of live coding. If I just log in there and I jump over to my other input, I can, well, this is, let's say, first of all, I start by introducing a topic, and I've got a nice pen I can work on there. And if I want to jump forward and emphasize a point, I can say yes. And now I'm going to make a really important point, and then I'm going to jump back down to the corner again, or off the screen entirely, whatever is appropriate. And I can kind of scan through, in this case, a PDF. Then if I want to jump over to my code editor, I can have a nice audio signal from that. So you should be hearing some music now with a bit of luck, which I can't hear. But yeah, so that's the idea really. Then you can, do your live coding demo. And I would, as Mark was saying earlier, a lot of this stuff, some of the concepts came from concepts of live coding and the idea of improvising with what you're doing with your practice. So in Mark's case, that would be improvising with mathematics and showing his process. In my case, it would be typing code and wanting to show my process, but turn that into a more performative thing where I could keep the people engaged by, editing camera angles, changing my input, going to regular background, whatever I need to do to keep people interested and to just make it have a live feel while I'm presenting, as if they're really part and it's happening in the moment. So yeah, that's more or less what I wanted to say. And maybe I'll just hand back over to Mark, see if he's got any more comments to wrap up with.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, Matt.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Mark and Matt. After my coughing fit at the beginning, I now feel I ought to be doing something spectacular with camera angles. I'm really sorry that I'm not able to. You've generated loads and loads of conversation in the Q&A section. I mean, the first message I would deliver from there, if you hadn't had a chance to see, is that you guys are the heroes and that people were really impressed with the start of that. There are some technical questions in the discussion panel about sort of the equipment that you're using. And I think that it might be useful. Mark, did you have a camera pointed to a white piece of paper that you were writing on, or was that a special whiteboard or something?
So let me. It's more difficult now because I haven't got the screen, but basically I'm showing you myself. I've got a white pad here, and above the white hat pad is the camera, the USB camera. Which I might have just broken for the sake of education here. Hold on 1 second.
This is live, folks.
This is live television.
We're not holding back.
Anyway, so it's an affordable USB camera which may or may not now work. I don't know. The light is still on. These are pretty robust. I've got a stand which is £15. I've got a white pad, and other things are falling on the floor. But that sense of liveness is what this is all about. And I've got a USB microphone. So yes, of course the kit wasn't, and I've got a light and a light stand. So yes, the equipment is there, but you can do this, I reckon, for less than £1,000. Set yourself up to teach from home. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, for some colleagues, the question will be where that £1,000 comes from.
I know. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so some of the questions in the panel were quite sort of technical. So Mark and Matt, if you get a chance to respond to the technical questions, kind of as we're going through the event, that would be really useful. A couple of the questions that sort of popped out from reviewing the questions was really the question of accessibility and for example, what do students have in terms of access to this session afterwards and perhaps in advance so that they can prepare. So would you mind addressing either of you or both of you that accessibility type question?
Yes. So one of the things that you always have to remember as a native English speaker is try to, and you have to say right at the beginning, and I knew I only had 9 minutes or something, Linda. If I'm speaking too quickly, you please tell me in the chat. And moreover, we record everything. So we record my session on OBS, we record the Zoom session, and we make those available online, every single thing that I do, so that it's always there for students to come back to for as long as they want. So even though the synchronous, real-time, improvised moments are really important, the students have absolute agency on where they want me to go, whether they want me to pull back, lean in, and I'd like to think that by the end of the course we trusted each other to make sure that students did not feel excluded in the moment. That's what's really key. Inclusion is a really important aspect, but I want these sessions that every student feels included in the synchronous moment. And I think knowing that it's going to be recorded and online, it does help give a sense of safety that they can go back to it. It's not the only answer to the inclusion issue, but it's something that obviously we thought extremely hard about, Linda. Yeah,
no, that's really helpful. I think that's right. And a couple of colleagues, as we've gone through here, have talked about captioning software as well, which ensures that there's a kind of a record of that discussion.
Absolutely.
And I think you picked up on one of the questions, which was about interactivity and how you draw, how the students get involved in that. So I think that's brilliant. Matt, was there anything you wanted to add in terms of some of the questions that were coming up around equipment? I mean, people are talking about OBS Studio. So is that what you're using?
So Mark's using OBS Studio. I'm using a thing called an A10 Mini, which is a little £250 box which you can plug cameras into, but I also I've written some custom software which you can get for free on my GitHub, which allows you to control it, run more sophisticated controls on it. It essentially turns it from a £250 box into the performance of a much more sophisticated live switching kind of deal with a big complicated interface. But so that's the core of our studio, is this little box which came out earlier this year.
Brilliant.
And Linda, just to say, what I'm doing is I'm just hitting hotkeys on my machine to switch between scenes. And I have to say, I found that the hardest thing, because I'm sometimes looking in the wrong camera or I've got the wrong shots up. And I have to say that's something that I need to work on, because it was tricky for me, for someone who'd not done that before.
Yeah. What I'd say about both of you, though, knowing you, is that you are both very comfortable in front of a camera. And one of the points that was raised here in the discussion is that, of course, not all academics or lecturers have that level of confidence in front of the camera, allied with the level of confidence to be able to find the right hot button at the right time to swap and so on. So I guess the question is one of the things of how can we gain confidence in these approaches?
Well, we don't always find the right button, do we, Mark? We all make mistakes, and so I think it's just a case of not worrying too much. Really, the students won't mind if you hit the wrong button and go, sorry, I just hit the wrong button, and then you hit the right one. They really won't care. And
but Linda, oh, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, go for it, Mark. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, so yes, I might come across as confident, but I was nervous about doing this. I practiced a lot with Matthew. I mean, a lot. So, just working with him and maybe a couple of colleagues at Goldsmiths, just trying it out. What works, what doesn't, how do I switch between it? So I might come across as being confident now, but it took an awful lot of work for me to get familiar enough with the technology that I felt I could deliver a good performance. Yeah. So the reason that technology is kind of interesting is it's a chance to give us feedback. So what I would suggest is try it out for yourself. Try it just with a friend or with a colleague or someone that you live with, and just see how they're interacting with you. But if you ignore the technology, you're not going to get better. So yes, it might be an incremental development in your confidence, but that comes with hours and hours and hours of working at trying to make this work as well as possible. It doesn't come for free,
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much, both. I'm going to ask Simon to talk to us now. There are more conversations coming in through the chat, so let's interact with them there if we can, and also pick up some of these at the end. So Simon, if I can pass over to you.
Simon, I'm afraid you're on mute. Yes, just trying to unmute, the most familiar phrase of 2020. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to begin by paying homage, I think, to Mark and Matthew. I've learnt a good deal, and I'm afraid that in nearly everything I say, I will be contravening what Mark and Matthew have said, not least in terms of my practice. I have no opportunity to share in the background or what have you. The sound will be the standard sound of my laptop. The camera will be the standard one-dimensional camera that I'm looking into now. But what I wanted to begin with is, I think, something that perhaps Mark might well appreciate. It's the words of a musician who spent a good deal of time in the 1970s and ever since contemplating the various qualities of musicianship and technology. And that is Florian Schneider from Kraftwerk, who has accompanied me to a point during various phases of lockdown, not least his computer world composition. But the point I want to make here is that sometimes, to quote, sometimes we play the music, sometimes the music plays us, and sometimes it plays. And I think with the technology that we are faced with, and the opportunities that abound us, then sometimes we have the opportunity to engage in learning. Sometimes the learning happens to us, and sometimes it's just learning. And I think this provocation, if you like, this reflection, allows us to engage in a form of discussion, which I'm very much looking forward to over the course of the next sort of 5-10 minutes on my behalf, and then the discussion afterwards, to think about the way we use synchronous learning opportunities and indeed asynchronous learning. And I have a brief confession to make in this too. That is that I am, as a scholar, much more familiar with, and indeed have invested in the last few years, the practice of asynchronous learning. That is the opportunity to think about learning that takes place without the direct intervention at the same time as the teacher. And I think what that has enabled me to do is to provide a certain perspective, and indeed much quality learning that goes on in the programs I'm responsible for and engage with. But it also, in terms of where we are with responding to COVID, and in the institution and in the industry that we work with, to think about the opportunities for synchronous learning too. And why is it that synchronous learning is such a feature that seems to be held up to scrutiny? Why is it that it's something that people are ascribing to? What is it about the performance that Mark so expertly shared that enabled us to be able to engage and learn a little bit more about mathematics than I have done for the last 25 years? And I think this is the importance here, therefore, is the relationship between the synchronous and the asynchronous. Thinking about what learning goes on outside of the classroom as we used to conceive of it, those four walls in an institution called a university, and the synchronous learning that takes place often in the past in those four walls. But we would already, and again I would put this to in the performative arts, in certain science subjects, the lab work, the performance, the exhibition space were already synchronous learning opportunities that were taking place without necessarily the centrality of the teacher. And this, idea speaks to much of the literature on, flipped classrooms and what have you. But again, it's not novel for this audience, I'm sure. But what it does speak to is the importance of the value of an online learning community in our current times. The learning community part of that is really what I would want to talk about for the next 2 or 3 minutes. And that's really where we have an opportunity to put a key discussion as part of what we're sharing, whether that's part of the subject matter, whether that's part of what's going on with the US presidential election, whether that's the quality of the sound that's coming through. In each of these regards, what we're able to see is a clear resonance for community learning. And that's one of those things that we took for granted when we were all in that same, four walls in a classroom. But this is where I think the opportunity to really develop a blend, for want of a word, and there are plenty about going around, hybrid, high flex, etc. But where we take essentially the best parts of our synchronous learning experience, the performative elements that we can prepare for and engage with, and then also the substantive parts which allow for learning which aren't synchronous. And there I think we have a real opportunity. So when we have lectures that are over 20 minutes long, or even over 6 minutes long is my preferred length, but when you have that kind of length of material that often colleagues want to be able to share, that is something that we need to be able to see more of. And in that sense, whenever we talk about the opportunity for interaction, we see that in the margins of lectures, we see that in the corridors, we see that in the conversations that students might pull you back to. We could use the opportunity to speak to the different interactions that students can have, and in the technology that we're afforded, we can see that there are numerous ways of having breakout groups, etc., etc. This is what we're going to be able to deal with. There are different technologies. Teams can do it, Zoom can do it, whichever one, whichever platform we are. We're able to utilize in those discursive moments. And in a subject which I teach most of the time, which is the subject of diplomacy, these discussions are really the opportunity for that reflective practice, which Mark spoke about. So in some sense, it's not so much around, a particular piece of code or a particular fact as much as it is about an opinion in which there may be right and wrong answers. So I think whether you're looking at a demonstration of watch this video clip, listen to this sound file, and then allow students those interactive moments, those synchronous learning challenges can still be there. I think they can, they're obviously determined by factors of time in terms of availability, but providing through a 24-hour period. And I think this is where one of the logistical challenges of higher education, moving away from the fixed timetable that things happen between 9 and 10 because it's Tuesday morning and that's when the lecture must take place, but providing a window of opportunity for those kind of synchronous and indeed asynchronous activities. Maybe half a dozen students can meet at 9 o'clock, maybe another 3 or 4 can meet at 10:30, and another 3 or 4 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. By the time you get to 9 o'clock the following morning, the synchronous activity has worked seamlessly, one hopes, with the asynchronous activity of those different sort of subgroups. And in providing focused activities with those real-time interactions allows students the opportunity to have the sense of learning community, even if dispersed by time and space. In some of the challenges that we face in terms of synchronous learning, we often think about sort of group presentations or the opportunity to work in small groups. It's one of the sort of familiar traits of any teacher training, particularly of yesteryear. But they clearly have merits. And being able to put yourself in a safe space, not just in a sort of breakout room that as a tutor you might arbitrarily decide, but to provide those spaces for students to work on an ongoing basis. And indeed, this is where I would say there's an opportunity for increased inclusion and diversity, or addressing inclusion and diversity, because those can be self-governed. And here I think one of the important words that Mark mentioned was around trust, and being able to talk about the trust levels between students and their classmates and the materials that are being presented. And through that, that's the how of their being presented. And this is where the opportunities again exist for us to think about the synchronous and the asynchronous hand in glove. So when you're talking about perhaps a quiz or assignment, little task that you've set with regard to for a student to undertake, this is where they can see how they are able to engage with each other and indeed get feedback. Now that feedback can be from each other, it can be from other groups, it can be over a period of time. But I think the opportunity to reflect is really where we're building that, and that's something that's lost often in synchronous learning. And one of the affordances of our times is that we can build in a little bit more reflection into those synchronous activities by utilising breakout rooms, feedback, chat facilities as we can see them. One of the other dimensions that I wanted to think about here was really about the sort of provocations for what's next in synchronous learning. If we're in a scenario about, really comes down to questions of what the university is, what the university offers into society, I'm hopeful, as I'm sure many of you are, that universities, perhaps by default, will be the vessels which, responses to the COVID crisis come from colleagues in relevant sciences, but also from colleagues who are undertaking important research into the social impact of this current climate. And I think that's where being partners with our students as members of society, their opportunity to engage in what they might seem real-time activities is something that we can really speak to and take advantage of. As a final point, I can come back to perhaps something that Mark mentioned in terms of the quality of sound and vision and backdrop and what have you, and recognise that in one's own practice there are opportunities there to learn and move forward. And in some senses, perhaps my greatest action point from this will be to invest in some of that technology facilities that I need to enhance, perhaps the power of my words, such as they are. I'll draw it to a close there. Thank you very much. Look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Simon. I think Andrew's just raised the screen just to show people where to put the Q&A in. If you could just show that slide, Andrew, that would be great. Thank you very much. First of all, there was a lovely comment about how nice it was to see your background with your bike, etc. And I think the point that the person who submitted that was not particularly your bike and choice of things on your shelves, but the fact that you become a human to the students, and that the students can also feel more confident in sharing their screen. And I know that is certainly a challenge for many of us who are teaching online, is just that getting the students to turn the camera on, and whether we need to get them to turn the camera on, and what that means. So I liked, Simon, that you were able to think about this idea of using synchronous and asynchronous to ensure that students have an opportunity to reflect and therefore engage with the learning or the opportunities for community and peer learning that you presented. So we've got some questions coming in. I'm just going to have a quick look at those, if I may. So we've got a question that says, are there any synchronous online platforms that allow students to quickly get into pairs or small groups they choose and then feed back to others, everyone, just as easily, as quickly as they can in a bricks and mortar room? I think that's a good question, because I think Zoom and Teams give us the control, whoever's doing the event, the control of the groups. Is that right? Do you want to comment on that, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges, I think, is the particular affordances of much of this technology. And of course, we're all learning and there are upgrades coming all the time. But through even the evolution of Teams that we've seen over the course of the last 6 months, you know, the centrality of the owner of the process, you know, that in democratizing the classroom and democratizing the learning space, you know, as to really say it as it is, we need to have a greater sort of ability and really share ownership across the different platforms. That some of that is, you know, practical sort of bandwidth kind of issues. Some of that is, you know, delivering material. You know, in some senses, this is what this is. This is a presentation today. If this were our class, I would like to be in the conversation, not delivering it. And in some sense, you know, that's partly because I would have the opportunity to learn, which I recognise in myself, and partly because I think it also makes you more accessible. And I think that you know, one of the reasons why I've neglected to utilise my institutional backdrop is that it doesn't allow for the connection with my students, with me. And it's not that I am, you know, the be all and end all of their learning, but more, you know, over and again, it's that connection that facilitates the learning. And I think that's where the synchronicity allows us to really make our presence felt. And I think that does that reinforces Mark's point about, you know, it's our presence. You know, my presence might be conveyed by, you know, the bike over my left shoulder, or the, you know, my Father's Day card that's on the shelf for my son. But you know, that's who I am, and I would want that to be part of my performance, my ability and, you know, experience and skills to share my learning with others. And, you know, by all accounts, you know, it's something that has worked and continues to work because my presence in their learning is something that has enabled students to learn, not because, you know, others couldn't do it, or because others couldn't do it, you know, in a different way or better, so to speak, but because it enables the students that, you know, you have a relationship with. And I think, you know, words like relationship, trust, you know, these are things that, you know, immediately one might think that the distance of a camera and a computer, you know, are barriers, but I think they can be overcome and indeed encouraged. I've often said, you know, for a decade, having worked with both campus students and online distance students simultaneously, that I know my online students better. You know, I feel as though I know them. I think they know me to a greater extent because of the nature of the interaction. And that's different from seeing someone, you know, once a week for an hour every 10 weeks and thinking that you know them. So that's where I think they're not mutually exclusive, but the opportunities are there.
I think you're absolutely right, Simon. Thank you for that. That point there is very powerful, actually, that you can know your online students more effectively. I'm going to invite Thierry to present now, because he's got some good stuff to talk about as well. There's some fantastic discussion going on in the question and answer area. And actually, what's really nice is that people are sharing lots of resources and suggestions. We'll make sure we capture as much of that discussion in the recording of the event as well as we can when we share that. Thierry, welcome, and please go ahead.
Yeah, hello. So first of all, thank you for the University of London to invite me to speak in such a brilliant panel. I'm a member of CNAM, which stands for National Conservatory of Arts and Craftsmanship. And just a few words about this institution, which is a higher education public institution, just to let you know the background of our learners. CNAM was founded during the French Revolution, and as you can see, I'm wearing proudly the badge of the founder, who is Abbot Grégoire. And I've got another badge which stands for Yes, We CNAM, but it's another story at the present. And So the idea of CNAM is raise people through education, social raising, and we don't have students, we have learners, so it's really vocational studies and lifelong learning. So this is for the background and to explain you what we are, what is taught at CNAM. I'm going to speak about virtual reality, and especially what you can do to learn and to teach and learn using virtual reality. You have to realize that the VR headsets are stepping into our homes in a couple of years, just because this kind of headsets are getting more and less expensive, and that there are a lot of use with this headset for virtual reality. So you can buy around 300 and 500 euros headset that can perform virtual reality. And what can you do with it is entertainment, of course. You can use it for gaming, for 3D and virtual games. But you can also use it for culture, especially for virtual visit. And in these times of pandemic, this is something which is really important to be able to visit in an immersive way some museum, for example, and there is at CNAM we have a fantastic museum of technological objects, and I would love you to welcome in this museum as soon as possible. And the third way to use this headset is, of course, education and teaching and learning in a virtual space. And this will be the core subject of my talk. What I can say is last Tuesday evening, I was at my desk in Paris, and I was attending a meeting on a beautiful and sunny beach. And I'm going to show you, I hope. I don't have the fantastic tools than Mark and Matthew, but I will share my screen and show you some stuff. Here it is. And about this beautiful and sunny beach is that I hope you see my screen perfectly. You should have a white stuff.
It's a blank white screen at the moment.
Good, thank you, Linda. So this is some picture taken from the scene on the sunny beach, and you see we were gathering something like 20 people all together as avatars, and I was looking and we were speaking all together. We had some interesting talk about VR. This was organized by an organization called France Immersive Learning, and I will talk a little bit more at the end. And can you imagine that in this world you can even take selfies? So this is a selfie with the people that was there around me. But so this is something which could look funny, but again, if you want to cheat, if you want to engage people, you have to provide them with quite interesting tools to do that. And we also had some, so that was in June. It was an, as you can see on the screen on the right, an expert talk on VR. Organized by this France Immersive Learning, and we were in this space all together with the screen and slides going on. There was a panel sitting down under the screen, and you had this theater around. But it was very interesting. We had very good presenters, and we could talk all together, and that was a nice opportunity. But it's still, we are in a virtual space, and we still have the metaphor of having a screen and banks and people sitting and hearing. But I will show you a virtual space. So we did this meeting in a space called Engage. It's Engage VR, you can see, and I will show you in a few seconds a video of what this virtual space can provide to you. So just playing with different screen and stuff, and here it is. So it is really dedicated for teaching. So you can put any 3D objects in a virtual space and show them, and you can teach on Mars, as you can briefly see. You can have a meeting room, but you can also do very strange stuff with cannons, but you can have a remote collaboration with this kind of note stick, and you can also have whiteboard and write on the boards. But you can be also in very difficult situation as this one, although you are not, you are still in safe during, and you can perform gesture, and that will be also the point of my talk. Training for example, you can train people about phobia if they don't like to take the plane, and you can help them with the headset, and you can have this. I just make a pause on this. This was a brilliant talk on chemistry, and I don't know if you can see that, but they are in the Oxford Library, I think, I was told, and then so on. So these are some examples of the spaces and on the situation that you can perform using Engage. And we are on the verge to use them more and more. So just a few glimpses about the different headsets. It's just to let you know that the hardware is exploding as you have more and more different hardware to use for headsets, like this hardware that are wired to a computer, and other one that are autonomous, like this one. So Oculus Quest, as I said, is €500 about to buy. And you can have very sophisticated apparatus like devices like this one, which is a headset which is connected to a backpack with the computer on your back. So that gives you the ability to move, not only to be seated on your desk and look at stuff with the headset, but you can even move in the space. So at CNAM, we are experimenting at the present with a company called Nimbus, and we are producing, and it is the very beginning of the project, we are producing this kind of stuff for training our learners, which are not students again. They are workers. They are the courses are in the evening or on Saturday morning, and they have a work. They have family. So we really have to give them very high. Very high quality resources for education. This kind of simulation can be used by somebody who needs to be trained to technical gesture. So you can see, I make just a brief stop to show you that what is he doing on his ankle. Indeed, he has a screen on his arm, and everything is written on the screen on the scenario he has to do. So this kind of stuff, you cannot have them in the real life, of course, and it helps a lot to design the pedagogical scenario. So in this case, you have to be trained to use this device that's unbottled perfume. And as you can see, it has been very precisely modelized. This is really something we are not going to be able to produce something so sophisticated for our courses, but the idea is to produce scenes for virtual practical courses. And in this case, he's weighting the bottle, so that the idea is he has to be trained how to weight, but also he can do some. We can train maintaining, so maintenance of the device, of the machine. And in this case, you see you have to perform the different gesture to do that. So for the learner's point of view, in what you have seen here is a person alone performing as an autonomous. But what we really want to do using this kind of tools is train the people in the virtual space with a trainer next to you. So the Nimbus company provides us with a platform that have analytics, which are analytics for the technical gesture. And in this video, you will see that in this case, there is a teacher and even another learner with him, and you have to connect to the simulation using and then this is electrical abilities, the courses, and everything that the learners do is of course recorded, and as you can see on the screen, you have all the analytics of what he has done on gesture. So it has really, as you can see, a training path that he can try and try and try again. And I've done this simulation. I can tell you it's really difficult to handle an industrial electric board. Because I was electrified many times before realizing what I had to do. And you can see the analytics, and when the learner comes back at his office, he can log on onto the platform and review what he has done and his progress. I'm going to end my presentation with this view, which is another way to perform technical gesture in the virtual space, which, as you can see, there is a real guy, but he's in the virtual space. And because he's on a green, in front of a green screen, so this is something we called augmented virtuality, because you have some guys, and the teacher can see the learner within the scene instead of seeing what the learner sees. And this on the top right, you see the screen of what the learners see, and it's awful because generally you move your head very fast, and it's difficult to work to realize what the learner is doing. So this was some of the insight I wanted to share with you about this, and I will be happy to answer some questions about that. And I'm now exiting the sharing my screen mode.
Thank you. Thanks. That was fantastic, and definitely moving us forward. I know that we're just about coming up to the end of the hour now, so colleagues will have to leave, but we're happy to stay on for a little bit further discussion if people are available to. We've got some questions that have come in on the question panel. One of the things is that there's been some discussion in the question panel about particular headsets and so on, and what we'll try and do is get some responses to some of those specific questions. Mark's also put up for us the link to the evaluation survey, and as we would welcome your responses if you can to that. A couple of questions that came up that I thought were quite useful to frame some of the discussions, Thierry, were there was a question about that Second Life has been doing this sort of avatar activity for a long time, but the question was why will it be different now? What are the features that are making it different now? Why is it more likely to work now?
The difference with Second Life is I've used it a lot when it's still working, but when you are in front of a screen, on a 2D screen with a 3D scene, and that you are moving your avatar and do some stuff with your mouse or a stick, but this is totally different when you are using a headset and your hand, and you are immersed in a scene, and you are looking around, and you can perform stuff, and the sound is specialized. That means if I have somebody of my right, I hear him on my right ear. So it's really change the way you have to tell your brain that you are not in a virtual space, but you are in reality. And the more you provide way to do that, and the ultimate goal is memorization. It's really memory. I can tell you stuff that I have done using my headset, especially for the training on the electric skills 6 months ago. I still remember clearly, fully what I have done, and sometimes some people say to me, "Oh, I was near the Cathedral of Paris," and then said, "No, sorry, I was in a virtual space near the Cathedral of Paris, not in the real life." But there was some mixture between virtual space and reality in this case. So it's a question of memory.
Okay, so it's that kinesthetic experience, which watching a screen, you don't gain that same kinesthetic experience.
Exactly.
And there was also a question, I think, around the effectiveness of learning through virtual reality, whether there's any research going on into the effectiveness of this type of learning with virtual or augmented reality in comparison to the old days. Although these days, I'm not sure what the old days count as. Is this... Is it this, or is it back in the day when we were all in a room? So I think that's an interesting question, which you may have some comment on, Thierry.
The thing is, virtual reality is not new. It has been developed, and there have been research on for more than 15 years. The thing is, what is really different is that for a couple of years, the devices are affordable. That means we can really think using them, not in a because there was the big corporate company like the one producing cars or planes that had this kind of device, and they can use it on the training. Now it's really it's possible to buy 20 of these headsets for a group in a course, so this is the game changing of the virtual reality using for training on the next year. So this is the idea.
Thank you very much. So I think one of the themes we've had today is the affordability and accessibility of equipment. We've seen that with Matthew and Mark, and in your discussion here, and also then with Simon sort of sandwiched in the middle with the sort of humanist student-centered perspective as well, which I think has been really exciting. We will draw to a close now. There are lots and lots of interesting sharing that's gone on in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure we try and extract as much of that as possible, particularly links to resources and so on. Just to say that we've got our, in 2020, we've got our last of the Experiences in Digital Learning series webinars taking place on the 1st of December, 2 till 3 GMT. time, and that will be reflections on digital learning in 2020, perspectives from the educator. So it will be an opportunity for colleagues to share their perspectives on what's happened in this very remarkable year in terms of learning and teaching within the digital space. So I'm very, very impressed with the sessions that we've had today. Thank you to the audience for engaging so effectively. Thank you to the presenters, and thank you to the teams in the background making this all work, Andrew and Mark in particular, and Kim. Very nice to see everybody. Keep safe, keep well, and we look forward to seeing you for the next installation on the 1st of December.